are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Star Wars Canon Podcast, episode 49. I'm your host, Stephen Hall, and joining me today is JG Carse. How are you doing today, JG?
I'm doing very well. Very excited to talk Star Wars with you. Always exciting. Even if there isn't much news, there's always something to talk about.
Yeah, and sitting down, we didn't get to have a show last week, but we're looking forward to kind of catching up on the past 2 weeks worth of news and keeping everyone up to date. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick little shout out. I know this week I teach at a small little school in Western Pennsylvania, and I was really fortunate. Another teacher of mine, they had an elective class where they were showing A New Hope this week. And, they asked, and they knew how much I love Star Wars. I got to come in and give a guest lesson and talk about the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell's point of view and Luke Skywalker and all things canon. The kids had a lot of great questions, and I promoted the podcast on there. So I've gotten a few more listeners this week. And if any of my students are listening, to quote Master Yoda, truly wonderful, the mind of a child is. But I wanted to thank them for supporting our page as well. All right, we've got our typical rundown today. We're going to look at a variety of topics, including films, novels, comics, TV, and then that's about it today. So I'm going to start with some film news. And this came from last week. Disney CEO Bob Chapek reaffirmed that Kathleen Kennedy is secure and will be continuing to work for the foreseeable future at Lucasfilm. When one person asked at an interview, they asked about Kathleen being fired, and Bob Chapek said, quote, "We've been absolutely thrilled that we can have the creative talent in our company, the likes of Kathleen Kennedy. We look forward to having Kathleen directing Lucasfilm activities for years to come." JG, what was your first thought when you saw this in the headline?
So my first thought was like, who is asking these questions? Like, I feel like this is a question that I would see in the comment section of a YouTube video and not at a stock meeting. But in all seriousness, I'm not surprised. Kathleen Kennedy is, like, if I remember correctly, don't quote me, but like she's like number 2 in the all-time producer, only behind Kevin Feige. And he recently just got that because of the Marvel movies. Like, this is a no-brainer. She has so much experience. And not only that, she has results. Barring Solo, which in my opinion was set up to failure to begin with, every Disney Star Wars film has made a crap ton of money. Whether you disagree with the content and the story direction, at the end of the day, Disney's a business, and she's made a lot of money for the company. She's made a lot of return on investment in the films. They're not firing her.
No. And I mean, if you pull up her IMDb, which I just did, I mean, she has 107 producer credits underneath her belt, some famous, award-winning films. Like you said, she's not going anywhere. And, whenever George Lucas trusted her, it wasn't like Disney picked her to run the company. George Lucas, right before he knew he was stepping down and selling, he decided to put Kathleen in charge, and he's worked with her for years on Indiana Jones, going all the way back, exactly. Jurassic Park, Spielberg. Like, she has such a breadth of just a wide variety of different topics. And again, I think we've seen such division the past couple of years between Star Wars fans because of some of the choices made in the movies. Well, that's not all on Kathleen Kennedy. Yes, at the end of the day, she is making some big decisions. But if we think about it, that, Disney realized, hey, we're re-bringing Star Wars back to life in 2015. They knew they needed to start with episode 7. For some reason, that's where the starting point was. They said, we've got Harrison, we've got Carrie, we've got Mark. Let's bring them back. Let's finish out, and then can do some new things. Think about 2015 to 2019 as like your phase 1. They had to get some projects out of the way, some things under the belt. And just look at how things are really shaping up as what I'm thinking like as a second phase. we see the Mandalorian, which has been running on all cylinders. We have, and I know JG and I were talking right before we started, we've got the High Republic Phase 1 in the publishing, and also this awesome crossover comic event we're going to talk about later today. There's just so many things to look forward to. And just like Marvel is releasing weekly content right now on Disney Plus, that's Star Wars next year. It would have been this year probably without a pandemic. But man, you know what? I really feel like, give her a chance. Whether that means she's going to stay in that position or maybe move around in Lucasfilm, I don't know exactly. But I think she gets a little bit more hate than she deserves. Would you agree there?
Oh, I definitely agree. And I think it's so hard because, like, again, like, you're entitled to your opinion when it comes to like how you feel about the story and the content, but it just comes down to like the results. Like, I look at this and it's like The Force Awakens, like in US, made 936 million. The Last Jedi 620 million. Rogue One 532 million. Episode 9 515 million. That's a lot of money. And unless she does something that's really drastic, I don't think she's ever getting fired. We're going to get that PR statement, probably in the next decade or two, that says she's stepping away and she's stepping into the sunset, either to do future endeavors or to, end it, and just to ride off into the sunset. She's not getting fired. Her contract is up in the summer, I think June. We're going to get an announcement soon. We might not even get an announcement, but it's going to get extended. Like, she's here to stay, I would say, for at least the next, I would say, probably 8-10 years at least.
And kudos to Chapek for like responding to these again.
Yes.
Questions that don't seem the most appropriate at the right situation. That was kind of our only big news on film in the past 2 weeks. I'm sure, like I said, right now they're focused a lot on Disney Plus, but I know they'll be ramping up more film production that we'll be able to talk about soon. Let's move over to the novel side of things. Another piece of news that came out of last week. There was an announcement made on the same day from Del Rey, Star Wars Books, and DK Books. And basically, the long story short is, throughout this year, there were going to be 2 books, if not more, that have now been canceled. We had a Mandalorian visual guide, which would have focused on season 1 and 2. And then we also had an original novel based with Mandalorian characters, Mandalorian universe. Both are canceled. And both DK Books and Del Rey Books put out a very similar statement that said, due to ever-expanding world of The Mandalorian, we will no longer be publishing The Mandalorian Ultimate Visual Guide and The Mandalorian Original Novel at this time, as the story continues to unfold on the screen. JG, what were your thoughts when this was announced?
So there had been a lot of rumors that this was happening for about maybe a little bit over a month ago, that this had been in the talks. And so it's the big conversation, I think, is like, is this because they're telling this story specifically with the novel? Are they telling this story in flashbacks or whatever in The Mandalorian, or maybe something changed in the story that negates this? Or is this because of the whole Gina Carano and Cara Dune stuff? I initially tend to lean towards the story is either changing or they want to show that story in TV. And at the end of the day, like, a visual media like TV and film is always going to take precedence over books or comics. Those are very important to Star Wars and they're very cool. And we obviously, as people who dive into canon, we enjoy those. But at the end of the day, TV and movies are always going to have the higher pecking order, for lack of better terms, to have that story told. And so if Dave and also, I just blanked on his name, Dave and his partner,
Jon Favreau.
Thank you. Yes. If they want to tell that story, like, they're going to have all rights to be like, yeah, sorry, that book's not. But as I've heard more conversations, it kind of makes me wonder if maybe it does have a little bit to do with Cara Dune.
Yeah, I think there's a combination of both things happening, and I don't think we're ever going to find out the full story. That's, behind, non-disclosure agreements, closed doors. But let's look at both sides there. I like what you said. Dave and John, they have proven themselves with probably one of the most in-demand pop culture events of the past 2 years with The Mandalorian. And I think with their upcoming Rangers of the New Republic, with their upcoming Ahsoka and whatever that ends up culminating in, they don't want to have their hands tied even in the slightest. Because if some small event happens in a novel or some reference in a visual dictionary, they don't want to have to say, oh, we can't do that because it would mess up the canon. So they want a clean slate. And you know what? If they wrap up their story in the next 4 or 5 years, however long it takes, then sure, if you want to go fill in the gaps or release a visual dictionary of this whole part of the universe, go for it. That would be awesome. I love the visual dictionaries from the movies. They always have a little bit of extra information by Pablo Hidalgo. And what's kind of not sad, but you do feel a little bit bad is, you know, that both these books were almost ready for press because the novel was supposed to come out at the end of last year, right around the end of season 2, and they kept pushing it back. I had it already pre-ordered, both books, and both of them got canceled on Amazon. Let's go to the Gina Carano thing, because the Cara Dune thing, excuse me, because here's the thing. If you don't publish, like maybe the novel was all about her point of view, and I understand that. You can't have her on the cover, whatever. But if the visual dictionary was all about Mandalorian season 1 and 2, and yes, she was a supporting character, and you have to take out 2 or 3 pages, that becomes a whole other issue where people are like, well, she's a supporting main character. Where's she at? I mean, you have to reference her or you're losing out on a big chunk of what happened in the story. I get that. But, you know, I also collect and read the, you know, ultimate Star Wars encyclopedias and stuff. So are you telling me that when they put out another edition of that in the next year or two, that you're not going to have a reference at all to Cara Dune? Because again, she's proven herself. You know, even if we don't see the character again, give her that 1 page, move on with it. Because I think you're going to get people up in arms in a year or two if another book comes out and she's not referenced at all. What do you think?
I agree. I think when it comes to the reference book, I think when I think about that, I think it's more they want to culminate the whole Mandalorian series and possibly include some of the other shows if they want to, or information. And so it makes more sense for them to make one complete big book versus like 3 smaller outdated books, you know, because like these ultimate visual like complete dictionaries always gets outdated within like 5 years because there's always new shows, new books, new comics. And so I think if you could just wrap it up, like, because we know Mando's not going to go on forever. Like Mando realistically is probably going to end somewhere between season 4 and 6. I'd be shocked if it goes past season 6, to be honest. So we know that it's a finite end at some point. And I think that, you know, they could be more detailed, like, because we would always get the sequel trilogy visual guides and everything, and they would always be lacking information specifically towards the 3rd act of the movies because they wouldn't want to spoil it. So I would rather wait, buy 1 big book that's maybe $60-$70 versus 4 books that are like $20 that have like missing outdated information.
I agree 100%. Absolutely. So hopefully that visual dictionary will be released in a couple of years. Like you said, I'd rather get a full complete edition than something that's partially completed. Moving on to the comic news. We just had Bounty Hunter. What issue just came out this week? And I just read it before we started, and I'll pull that up. But we had just 1 issue this week on the Bounty Hunters, and I think next week we're going to see the Dr. Aphra issue pop up. The current Bounty Hunter arc that I just read here today, it's really kind of leading into what we're about to talk about. It's issue number 10 that just came out, and it had a couple nice references, but it kind of sets the stage for where we're headed into what we're about to talk about. Basically, this week, every couple of months in advance, Marvel Comics puts out their solicitations where they talk about upcoming issues. And this week was the big announcements of what's coming out in June. And basically, there were kind of 2 eras we're going to talk about. The High Republic number 6, which again, we're reading through those comics. And what was interesting about this one was Avar Chris from the High Republic book series is front and center on writing a Rancor. So we'll talk about that. But also what was interesting was we're now seeing how they're going to start to cross over this big crossover event over the next few months between War of the Bounty Hunters number 1, Star Wars 14, Dr. Aphra 11, Bounty Hunters 13, Darth Vader 13. So just looking at those covers and brief descriptions, JG, is there any issue that you're most excited about over the next couple of months as we get more comics coming our way?
Yeah, in regards to like the War of the Bounty Hunters and all that, that's really interesting to me. Like I like kind of like these event type series. I don't read a lot of comics. I used to try. There's just so many different comics that are coming out, and like it's hard to keep up with. I'm lucky that I could keep up with books and TV shows in general, but to add comics. But I always like covers always look so good, so interesting. I love Afra. I have read, except for this current one, I've read all of Afra before this. So Afra is definitely up there for me. Love the character, want her live action as soon as possible. Um, I think just the whole concept and of the bounty War of the Bounty Hunters is interesting to me.
I agree. I think when we go back and watch Empire Strikes Back and or even, excuse me, Return of the Jedi, and we see Han right there in Jabba's palace, it was kind of, I hate to say, implied before that Boba Fett left Bespin on Slave One with Han, and he goes, and because it's only a year in that time gap.
Yeah.
So we didn't think there was much more to tell, but this is going to be proving that all the characters were involved trying to find Han before he even makes it to Jabba's palace. There's been some great artwork out with that. And again, it's just something that kind of gets you excited because if you read all of it, like some of us do, it really enhances your overall connection to this shared universe.
And it makes sense. Like it makes sense that like they're gonna not just let Boba get away with this. Like I know I saw comments that were like, "Oh, this is stupid," but in my opinion, like obviously, like for me, it makes sense. Like they're not gonna just like, "Oh, Boba got him. Oh, I'm just gonna go find another bounty." Han Solo is probably the largest one of, if not the largest, targets in the bounties in the galaxy. You're not gonna just like call it a day, go get a beer. Like, no, you're gonna go get him. If you can still get that bounty, you're not gonna stop him. So of course, I think that makes that a really interesting. Like, we've seen like like the Rebel War, the Civil War, the Clone Wars, and all this. But like to see kind of like this war, like something that was teased for Solo too, even like this criminal war, like to see something like that is so new, but yet so exciting for Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think this wraps up in October, and then we have the Book of Boba in December. I mean, if they're doing more of this connective tissue, maybe we will see some references, or hopefully it will see some more of those familiar or even some new bounty hunters from this arc, and just get to see them a couple years later in live action would be awesome.
Do you think reading because I know bounty hunters like in general has been going on for a little bit now. Do you think it's like almost required to read that to lead into War of the Bounty Hunters?
You know what? I hate to say it, but that's probably going to be the one that's going to have the biggest connection, obviously, because it's War of Bounty Hunters. And in the first 10 or 11 issues here of Bounty Hunters, they've introduced and reintroduced some famous bounty hunters in these small little arcs. So I feel like if you want to kind of get caught up, that'd be a good one to do. Also, because the main bounty hunter that you follow throughout the Bounty Hunter Marvel comic, his name's Valance, and he has popped up a few times. He was in Legends, and they brought him into canon, and he was actually connected with Han Solo in the Imperial Academy leading up during that cut part of time there during Solo. And so where it hangs off here on this little cliffhanger leading into this, like, Valance knows Han Solo, but Valance didn't know that Han Solo wasn't Carbonite. So there's something more personal here than just trying to get that reward from Jabba the Hutt. Speaking of characters that have gone from Legends to canon, nice little segue. Dr. Aphra number 11 coming out in June has Dr. Aphra, Santa Staros on the cover facing off with another bounty hunter that his name is Dirge. And Dirge appeared in the 2003 Clone Wars cartoon that we will also be talking about shortly. JG, do you remember Dirge? What do you know about him, and how excited are you to see a Legends character making his way back into canon?
Oh my goodness, I am so excited. So not as much as like per se the whole Legends aspect, it's just like the character himself. Dirge, because I grew up with that animated Clone Wars. He was also in some other Legends content as well, as I learned this week, like some comics and other material. But Dirge is just a unique villain, and I think when you add unique characters, it just makes Star Wars fun. Like I remember watching the animated 2D Clone Wars as a kid over and over and over, and I remember always loving the look and how cool and how BA Dirge looked. Like, and now that he's canon, and I personally love it because even though Legends has barely any meaning to me, I know Legends is significantly important to a lot of Star Wars fans, and I never want to minimize that. And so the fact that these fans can now have another piece of what they love about Star Wars in canon always makes me really happy, because I think the more and more that you can add from Legends into canon, you generally have a lot of people happy. You have the Legends and the canon people happy. So I think it's overall really, really good for Star Wars.
Yeah, in a matter of 5 years, look at how many Legends characters have made their way and been canonized, especially Thrawn. So it makes you wonder how long until we see other famous characters.
Mara Jade, please.
It's a matter of time. I don't know much about her, but I would love to see her just from the little I do know. All right, we're going to move on to our TV side. And again, we have lots of great segues tonight, including the fact that Dirge, who appeared in Clone Wars, the 2003 micro short series that had 3 seasons and that was broken up into 2 volumes, it's kind of hard to find right now. However, starting on April 2nd, you're going to be able to stream it on Disney Plus, along with a variety of other Legends content, including The Caravan of Courage, Ewoks Battle of Endor, 2 Ewok films that were made for television, Star Wars Ewok Seasons 1 and 2, which was an animated series, and last but not least, The Story of the Faithful Wookiee, which is a short animated feature or a short animated clip that was included in the Star Wars Holiday Special. So even though we're not getting the full Star Wars Holiday Special, we're getting a lot of Legends content. JG, I think I know which one you're most excited for. Can you tell us what else you're looking forward here with this April 2nd release on Disney Plus?
Yeah, I'm very excited for the Clone Wars. Grew up with that, watching that on Cartoon Network. I always remember being like, why are these so short? And then I actually got them on DVD. I still have them. It's one of the few pieces of physical media that I have still. But I actually, in general, I like all the other stuff, because I think it's cool to see where Star Wars was. And even though it might be severely outdated, and probably not the most polished, it could be fun. I think if you look at it with the lens of like, this is fun, this is Legends, this is legacy content, I think there's something that you can learn a lot from it, like that this was someone's Star Wars at one point, and it might have that nostalgia feeling. I've seen actually, I don't remember much of it. I think a couple years ago I watched Caravan of Courage. I didn't hate it. You know, it's not like I'm gonna put Rogue One on or The Last Jedi, but I didn't hate Caravan of Courage. I like having the option to watch it.
For sure. I also purchased a few of those when they came out on DVD years ago, and I enjoyed a couple of things about this. I like that we have the ability to go back and watch this because, you know, on the Marvel tab on Disney Plus, they have put a lot of the Legends material, like the X-Men, that don't fit in with the MCU. And so I think it's important, like if Star Wars really wants to have their complete library here, they are including everything. So this Legend material that you might have grown up with in the 80s with the Ewok show. I did notice, you know, it's missing this 2 or 3 seasons of the Star Wars droids, which is focused on C-3PO and R2-D2. Do you think they're saving that for some other time because they don't want to confuse with the upcoming droids TV show they announced?
I actually think they're going to use it to drop it when that drops out, like kind of like a collaboration type thing, like kind of.
That's a good idea.
I think it's just easy. It's good marketing, because I think it definitely proves that, like, if they're willing to put this stuff on there, they're willing to put other stuff. Like, I think a holiday special like that could probably come either around May 4th or like holiday time. That's gonna make it on there. If you're putting the animated part of that on there, you're putting the Ewoks, the Caravan of Courage, all that stuff. It's gonna make its way there. They have it. Why not?
Is there any chance that George Lucas like signed some type of agreement saying you can only do that because that short animated clip he actually put as an Easter egg on the DVDs back in like 2004, 2005? Like, he is so, I think, embarrassed and upset that he ever sunk to that level and sold out to do that holiday special, that I think if I had to guess, he probably made some agreement with Disney like that will never see the light of day. And you can find it on YouTube, but that's something I wonder if it'll ever be on Disney Plus. And also, why drop all this now? I know we have Bad Batch on May the 4th, but why not do like a big Star Wars drop on May 4th? Is there a reason you think they're putting everything out right now?
It could be maybe just add some content for April. Maybe if April is leaning a little bit smaller on what they're adding for Disney Plus, because I think April really they're just the big major thing is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But besides that, from the
Yeah.
top of my head, I don't think they're really adding much. I think it's just continually giving Star Wars fans and even Disney Plus subscribers just more content. Because like also like those really don't like. So like I said with droids, like you could release that when the new droids drops.
Mm-hmm.
Life Day, it could come out like in November, whenever Life Day is, or whatever date it is.
Yeah.
These other things like they don't really like necessarily fit into other things. So it's like, oh, let's just drop it in April. We're light on content. Let's give the Star Wars fans a little extra something. That would be my best bet. But I think if Lucas did that, I would be bummed because I don't know. There's just something fun and quirky about the holiday special. Like, I've actually have seen that thing probably too many times than I probably should.
Yeah.
More than 5 times.
Twice
And
for me. Twice.
It's one of those. It's a rite of passage. I feel as a Star Wars fan. You have to watch it at least once. So
Yeah, and one other thing before we move on, like I want to add on to what you said about Star Wars Clone Wars. I really felt like, again, this came out a couple years before the more famous Clone Wars, and so I really felt like this Clone Wars, there's so much in it that I wish would be canonized, because like you're getting your very first introduction to Asajj Ventress and how she came to work with Count Dooku. You get your introduction, and it's kind of scary even for a kid's show, of General Grievous when he first pops up. And then the whole final arc really showing how Palpatine gets kidnapped, and it leads directly, like it was a perfect watch this, then turn right on to Revenge of the Sith, like Rogue One into A New Hope. And so there's lots of places that could have answered and filled in the gap. Like you even saw how Anakin got his scar on his face.
Yes.
And there, I feel like you could easily kind of make this fit in, and they never did for some reason. But I do wonder if they're going to put like a Legends banner on that Star Wars tab, because they don't want to get people confused on what is official, what's not.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they've got other smaller kitty stuff on Disney.
They'll probably use that term legacy again, like they
Yeah.
do with the Marvel stuff. I think that Clone Wars, it's very underrated to the people who don't know about it and haven't seen it. It's really special, and that style of animation, which it kind of reminds me of the animation for it's not the same as Resistance, but in the same idea that it's different from Clone Wars and like Rebels. I love like that very exaggerated look, that very almost like Samurai Jack, which makes sense because he did the same thing, like very exaggerated. And so I think just having more Star Wars is just good stuff.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. I'll look forward to kind of going back and digging into some more of the Ewok stuff that I might have missed the first time around. Our last story for tonight, in the TV side. Aladdin actor from the Aladdin live action movie, Mena Massoud, fuels Ezra Bridger rumors with an Instagram tease. He posted an image this week, and his caption was, "Hey, just so you know, when I escape, I won't hurt any of you." For most people, that's just a caption. However, the Kessel Run Transmissions Twitter account said that this is a direct quote from Ezra Bridger in an episode of Star Wars Rebels. So obviously, there's something going on here. Do you think it's official? Is he kind of teasing what he knows, or is it just him promoting himself? What do you think, JG?
He's Ezra. He's been cast.
No.
It is the direct. Like I pulled it up because I was like, oh, and then I like looked it up on Disney Plus, and I was like, that's a quote, that word to word. And it's one of those things where he obviously probably got permission, because being the fact that he's worked with Disney before, he knows the rules and all that. He's obviously probably got permission. But even if he he's like, even if he didn't, or if there was like some little like gray area there, he could be like, I'm just putting a quote there. I'm not saying I'm in it. That's you guys. But come on.
Yeah.
How more for the Brits out there? How more cheeky can you get by putting that quote out there? And like everyone has said that Ezra is Space Aladdin. Like it just, whenever that rumor came up, I had never, or the leak, I guess, that he was being considered, that he was the front runner for this. I had never thought about it, but then when I start putting those thoughts together, it makes so much sense. The age, the face, the physique, he hasn't had jobs apparently since Aladdin, which is really, I think that's horrible. Like, he's an amazing actor. And I'm so glad now that we get him. If he is to be Ezra, I'm so glad, because he's going to be perfect. He's Ezra. Like, unless something has happened, he has been cast, and we will see him as Ezra.
Yeah, and every article that posts those pictures side by side comparison, like, I do see that connection so well. Like, I know there are a lot of people, and previously on this podcast, I know Brian and Richard talked about the original actor that voiced him on the show having the chance to play him, and I wish he would have as well. But man, there's something here, and I wish him luck. And I hope we do get to see this, and I wish they would just officially announce it instead of keep leaving us in the dirt with it. But that's how they roll.
They're not. We all knew that. We all knew about Bo-Katan, and we all knew about Ahsoka. They said nothing. Even up until they said nothing. We're not gonna know until he first shows up in Ahsoka or wherever we see him first. Like, yeah, I think that's, and because of the fact of, like, he kind of could pull off also a young Ezra. Like, he could pull off like an older Ezra, but he's still young. So I think that's cool, because like you could have him show up in other shows if you wanted to as younger Ezra. Like, he has that younger face that some of those actors have. And I think that's what's a really interesting possibility, is that as we continue to get more Disney Plus shows, like, yeah, they're going to be focusing on like the Ahsoka show, the Ranger show, and that whole lead up to Thrawn, as we presume that we're leading to. You can still have flashbacks of young Ezra and have him play that, because he does look young.
And I know you and I are both kind of rewatching some Clone Wars now, and a few other people in our podcast group are. It makes you want to finish Clone Wars to see Ahsoka's whole story, and then all of Rebels, because really I feel like everything being teased, like if there was ever a plan for an animated show for a Rebels sequel, that's been left, and now we're getting a variety of different live action shows to finish out these stories. But I'm excited. I can't wait. I mean, it'll be here before we know it, and it'll be great. So that was a little bit shorter of a show today. We don't have any more video game news, but we would love to hear from our audience. Tell us what you think. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Please send in your feedback. So if you want more content from Star Wars Canon Podcast, please check out our Patreon and head over to the Discord server links, where there will be a description of episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. For myself and JG, along with all the other hosts of our podcast. We hope you have a great week, and join us next week. Thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.